Now up, number one, the pitcher, Chris Potvin. Triple for Chris Potvin.
Chris was a very special boy in my heart as a mother. He had a lot of good qualities. When he was little, he was very close to me, as most boys are with their moms. But as he grew, he got closer to his dad because, you know, his father was in sports, and at an early age, Chris showed a big interest in sports. They spent a lot of time together. He really enjoyed it as much as Wayne did.
He was a chip off the old block. He just liked everything I did. His favorite sport was baseball. His favorite team was the Yankees. And his favorite guy was Thurman Munson.
Sports were always a big part of our lives. Chris and I were both Yankees fans, just like our dad. My married name now is DiMaggio, so I'm sure he would think that was pretty cool.
I always remember one time when he was small, he was waiting on the front steps for Wayne to come home from work. And Wayne was tired. He'd had a tough day, and he said, "Dad, I've got the ball and glove ready. We'll practice my pitching." Wayne said, "Oh, Chris," he said, "I'm really tired." He said, "Maybe we could do it another time." He said, "Okay, Dad, if you don't want me to be a big-time ball player, forget it."
Want me to throw a curve, Dad?
Yeah.
My dad and my brother were always at the ball field, always working on something, always practicing. And it's not like my dad ever had to drag him there. I think it was the other way around. My brother just always wanted to practice and get better.
Number one, the pitcher for Montville tonight, Chris Potvin.
I first met Chris, I think in about 5th or 6th grade. And we started playing basketball together all the time and some pickup baseball games. And, you know, he was one of the better athletes in Montville. I was coming up in New London, and this was before travel ball and everything else. And we had a kind of a group of friends that kind of started getting together and playing, you know, everything we could, football, basketball, baseball, pickup games everywhere. So, you know, you just meet a kid for the first time, and, you know, we had a lot of similar traits, you know.
They were two of a kind. Both guys super competitive, you know. They're two of a kind, him and Bill.
Billy was at our house all the time. They were either playing sports together or watching wrestling on TV. I know they both liked Hulk Hogan, and Andre the Giant was really big back then. I couldn't stand it because every single time they would watch wrestling on TV, they would think that they could practice their favorite wrestling moves on me, and I wanted no part of that.
Mrs. Potvin will tell you we probably got into a little bit too much trouble.
Well, Billy and Chris were really good kids. They were, but they were mischief makers. They were always looking to get into some trouble, not necessarily anything that would involve the cops, but things that drove me absolutely crazy.
I was a couple years older than Chris and Bill, and when you're a teenager, that is a huge, huge difference.
Billy and Chris did annoy Tiesha because she was just a little bit older, and they were always pulling pranks on her and doing things to make her crazy.
They spent all of their time trying to make me as miserable as possible, and they succeeded quite a bit too.
Well, poor Tiesha, gosh, she was like, you know, my second sister, so to speak, and I was like her second brother. And, you know, Chris and I, we were a little bit younger than her, a couple of years, and, you know, gosh, if Tiesha was home during the day, we would bother her to death, make her take us somewhere, drive us to the store, do this and that.
They fought like most kids do. You know, they were very competitive on games. You couldn't bring a card game, a bingo game, anything in the house because they both wanted to win, and when the other one didn't win and one won, there was a fight on your hands. It was constant.
Chris and I were extremely competitive, and to to the point where board games at our house were actually banned. We were not allowed to bring them in. We weren't ever given them for Christmas.
So one Christmas, they said, we didn't get any games for Christmas. I said, no, I can't stand the trauma anymore. They did do a lot of bickering back and forth, but they did support each other in sport.
As competitive as Chris and I were with each other, when it came to competing against others, we always had each other's backs.
I do remember when Tiesha was, she became very fond of skating. That was her love, still is. And Christopher was her best fan. I mean, he would go to those skating competitions and he was her big rooter.
Next skater, Tiesha Potvin from Dayton Arena.
Chris couldn't stand to see Tiesha lose it or end up second or third. You know, if he come down in the score and she was second, third, he was super mad.
Christopher was a great athlete. He could play so many different sports, but when it came to baseball, we could just tell that he was going to be something special.
Unbelievable. You know, there was nothing that he didn't think he could do.
You know, Chris was going to be one of those guys, and I think sometimes people overstate some things with kids, but Chris was as talented a kid. Now, I've got a chance to see now, coach kids, everything for the last like 30 years or so, and see kids coming up through camps and coaching. He was as good a kid as I've ever seen at 13, 14 years old. I'm not overstating it, especially on the mound and defensively. He was always in my opinion, a very good hitter. I think he would have become a great hitter as he got older, bigger, stronger. But on the mound, as a kid, you know, you don't see kids throwing fastball, curveball, changeup, slider. And Chris had dominant, not only, you know, command of those pitches, but threw really hard. In a game one time, I remember playing, I don't know if it was an all-star game or a Babe Ruth game or something, and I'm catching, he's pitching, and it was just kind of funny because he was like winking at me. It was hysterical because he knew he had this curveball that, you know, at 14 years old, nobody can hit a curveball. And Chris had this ability to drop this curveball slider over for a strike every time, and like, you know, he had a couple kids, if he really didn't like them, he wanted to strike them out, he'd be like telling me in the inning before, he'd say, Billy, I'm just throwing curveballs, I'm just throwing curveballs. You know, when you're a little kid, you're kind of ducking and he's dropping them in for strikes. And I mean, he'd have games, he'd strike out 15, 16 guys.
Everything came easy to him, you know, baseball, basketball, golf. You know, he was unbelievable. Went out there and golfed, you know, and he came close to beating me 2-3 times. And mad when he didn't.
He had that little edge to him. You know, some people may have called it cocky a little bit, but I called it just being a great competitor. He knew his ability, and he was a lot of fun to play with.
We were playing, I was over in Legion, and we were playing New London, and Menhart was pitching. He's about to be drafted high, senior at Fitch.
Who threw about, you know, 90 miles an hour. New London Legion was the best pitcher around here in Legion baseball.
It comes to the seventh inning, and he kept saying, Dad, can I please hit against him, please? I said, Chris, the guy throws 90 miles an hour, he's going to be drafted, I don't care. He said, let me try.
Chris is playing as a 13-year-old, which was unheard of. Nobody did.
Well, he went up there, boy, I'm telling you, he was digging in. And Menhart was grinning.
Throwing bullets, you know, right, you know, boom, 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 88, 90 miles an hour.
And Menhart threw 2 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, and Chris was right on him. He tipped one back, he missed the other, but you could see he was right on the pitch. He threw him a wicked curve, and Chris was frozen right there.
Struck out, he's 13, and he actually took the bat and kind of whacked it on home plate like he was upset that he didn't get a hit.
And he pounded that ball on the ground. He said, I can't believe the guy threw me a curve. He's afraid of me.
People were like, they couldn't believe that he was even up there taking his hacks and not being afraid, but that was one of his competitive, sides I always loved.
After Menhart shook his hand, and he said, hey, that's the kind of ability and ambition you've got to have if you're going to be good. And so I'll never forget that as long as I live.
You know, after we lost Chris, you know, most young guys that age, they're in high school now. They could really probably not care anymore.
And I always, loved the Potvin family. Again, they were like a second set of parents for me growing up. And even after Christopher's accident, we always stayed close.
One day, there was a rap on my door. I believe it was a Saturday morning. And Bill says to me, "Mrs. Potvin, do you know who Hulk Hogan is?" And I said, "Yes, he's a wrestler." He said, "Well, we're going to turn on the TV right now and you're going to watch him and you will love wrestling after this." And he stayed with me all morning while we watched wrestling.
To be truthful with you, I didn't start the scholarship fund. Chris had just died that January. Somebody come up to me and a whole mess of coaches, DeMars and Iovino, and they said, "Wayne, let's get it together." We went to the Elks Club and there was about 45 of us there. And that's the way the whole scholarship started. The very first baseball tournament we had was in 1987 with 4 teams. From there, it just took off. Every year it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
But it was getting harder and harder to get fields, and it was getting to be a nightmare, rain-out games.
I was at the end of my rope. I was calling at midnight, and when we had rainouts and everything, and Billy said, "Wayne, can I help?"
Well, I was a recipient, number one, way back, a long time ago, coming out of high school myself.
He took over about 6, 7 years ago, and he run the whole tournament through his smartphone and computer.
I got involved as the years went on, and he was running the baseball tournament, and as I got a little bit older, a little bit more successful, he kind of was like, "Hey, I need you to do a little bit more."
I probably can do it with a lot less effort, he says, instead of driving you crazy like it does. So, and he did.
I can't say enough about Bill and his contribution to the scholarship fund.
And then that's when he come to me and he said, "Wayne, I could make a lot more money."
So Bill came up with the idea of the golf tournament.
And that's when we dropped the baseball tournament and we started the golf tournament, and it was a godsend, the tournament. I hated to stop the baseball tournament because it was really a lot of work for the amount of money we made.
I think the goal, we've always said, with the scholarship is kind of award it to kids who are similar to Chris. Not only good students, but are very good athletes, good leaders, good role models, good in the community, solid all the way around.
But he don't have to be the best player on any team, as long as he is a member of the varsity.
Well, we call up the coaches, the teachers, the principals, guidance counselors, all these applicants as we start getting near the finalists, and we want to hear from them.
And I call a lot of coaches and everything just to make sure these kids are what they seem like.
The recommendations from the coaches are huge for us, because you could be the best athlete in the world, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, but if your coaches aren't nominating you or don't have great things to say about you, then we're not going to move them forward in the selection process.
It used to be we would have everybody go to Dodge Stadium, and in between innings we'd call each one of them out, which was great. The kids liked it. But then when Billy come in, and started helping me a lot with the tournament, and he said, "Wayne, why don't we do a banquet type thing?"
I think for us, all of us that are involved with the scholarship fund, the biggest reward for us is seeing the families, meeting the kids, some of them for the first time or seeing them in a different light, and awarding these hardworking kids, student athletes who were great athletes in high school and good role models, captains, leaders.
My dad coached baseball for a long time, and Billy and I have been coaching for about 30 years now. We all understand the hard work these student athletes put in, and it is really rewarding on banquet night to honor their accomplishments and reward them with a scholarship in my brother's name.
If you ever look at the list of all the Potvin winners, it really is a who's who of who's been around here in sports. I mean, some tremendous people who are accomplished now, who, maybe pro ball players, or they're doctors or lawyers or attorneys or teachers or so many different professions. And these kids, what's great is now sometimes they'll give back as they enter their professional ranks after college. I think the goal of all of us that are on the board now, and certainly for me, is to try to keep this scholarship going for as long as we possibly can.
This year we will go over $500,000 since, of course that goes since 1987. I know it's a lot of years, but still it averages like 13,000, 14,000 a year. But that's a lot of money, and I was hoping to hit $1 million, but I'm not going to live that long. But I'll try like hell.
his commitment and drive is just, it's inspiring for like me and others who want to donate some money or want to help out and grow the fund, as the years move on. But he's been incredible and truly deserves all the credit. People like me and some other board members, we're just trying to help out.
Billy's done more than just help out over the years. He's really everything you would expect my brother's best friend to be.
I can't say enough good about Bill. And I made this little speech once at the scholarship award. I can't help but think Christopher looks down and says, "What a friend I had in Bill Bacetto."
And it's worked great for me because I get to honor a kid who was like my best friend when I was younger, and just a super kid.
Yeah, we were best friends. We went everywhere together. It was like, we just had a lot of fun. We enjoyed being together, except when I gave him heck. And that was the thing that if I ever had to do over again, I would be a little bit less, I put a lot of pressure on him in baseball because I wanted him to be the best. But it goes to show you how much more grown up he was than me. I went home one night and I said, "Chris, Dad hollers at you when I shouldn't, but I'm telling you, I love you." And he said, "I know that, Dad," but he says, you really embarrassed me in front of my peers, in front of my teammates, and it made me feel like 2 cents. Here's a kid, I should have known that, and my kid is telling me that. So then I knew he was always going to be a great kid. I just wish he could have been here with us.
Things since he passed are different, but things like the scholarship fund and the tournament really do help keep his memory alive.
It's rewarding for Wayne and I to see that this has continued for so many years.
It's just nice to think that a youngster can mean that much in a community.
My husband, Wayne Potvin, passed away suddenly from a heart attack on September 29, 2021. I tried to call my daughter and her husband, Tom, but they were unfortunately on vacation at that time. They were in Florida.
We had just driven down to Melbourne, Florida, and when we got up the next morning, I noticed I had so many phone calls from my mom. She's like, "I don't know how to tell you this, but your dad passed away last night." We just started packing everything up.
They put the suitcases in the car and came immediately home, driving all through the night.
And I said to Tom, you need to call Billy.
Tiesha and Sid had called me and let me know, probably about 8:30 in the morning, that Mr. Potvin had passed away overnight, and obviously very shocking because he was in great shape. I had just talked to him actually a few days before.
He immediately went over to my mom's house and started taking care of things until we could get back.
Billy said, "Don't you worry about a thing. I'm going to go over and I will stay with Mrs. Potvin until they get here." And that's exactly what he did.
We wanted to kind of help Mom get a fresh start. One of the things that we did was take my dad's office and turn it into kind of a memory room for my dad and Christopher. It's filled with pictures, from tournament pictures to pictures of us growing up. It's really nice to go in there, and it's just a sense of familiarity and warmth when you walk in.
My husband put a great deal of time into the Christopher Potvin Scholarship Fund.
I really feel that my dad just didn't want the memory of my brother to go away.
When Tom and I went through all the belongings and mail and artifacts from over all the years when we were cleaning out the office at Mr. Potvin's house, we were struck by he saved every single thank you note from all the kids, all the donors, all the sponsors. It was amazing. I mean, he had things from 1988 all the way up to this past year.
The one thing my dad wanted more than anything was to be with Christopher again.
They're up there playing a game of catch right now, and Wayne's probably giving him some pointers. Chris is maybe giving him a little smart ass answer, perhaps, but I'm sure they're having a ball.
Bounce it up on the thing and then go ahead. Where do you see this at home?
I can't help but think in my mind that right now they're planning for a new ball game.
He's with my brother.
While we're all sad that Wayne's no longer here, certainly happy that they're certainly reunited, and I'm sure they're having a great time.
Wayne worked very hard on the scholarship fund. His goal was to reach $1 million.
Mr. Potvin always had a goal, and he was unabashed saying it. He wanted to give away $1 million.
He mentioned this at the last banquet before he passed.
The biggest night for him was the scholarship dinner because he loved meeting the kids and seeing the kids and handing them the money and hearing their personal stories. So I'll miss that quite a bit.
With the success of the golf tournament, I have every confidence that we will reach our goal of $1 million.
We are going to get to $1 million. I don't care, and the board doesn't care how long it takes, what it takes, how many years it takes. We're gonna give away $1 million, and that's gonna be not only in honor of Christopher, but in honor of Mr. Potvin and all the work that he's done over the years to give back to our community.